Um, so a bit of a background about myself and well, first of all, I was born in Palestine and raised up in Jordan, my home country, educated there, did my bachelor's degree in the University of Jordan. Um, did start my career in 1995, and I'll come to my professional career later on, but this is a bit about the educational background. On that, in my early life, one of the things that, I didn't get a chance to actually be well educated in, but I was very talented in as a hobby. It was the programming, and one of the things that really impacted my career was being fascinated by programming. And one of the lucky people to actually with my dad in the university, we actually getting to know AutoCAD when it first landed in the late 80s, and I got a chance to actually learn the AutoCAD at that time as an engineering. And then during my career, as a lot of people do, they get indulged, they get really sunk into the work and the profession. I started work in '95. I decided to do my executive MBA while I was in Sudan and Khartoum as a CEO. I did my executive education, which really impacted my way forward and my thinking towards what would be my career and and how I would be envisaging my life as an entrepreneur or doing my career work. So I decided that time to join Triumph, an executive MBA, where it's a collective MBA between New York Stern University, LSE London, and HEC Paris. And it was what opened up a lot of aspects into entrepreneurship, networking, and have a different slight view on how things are in terms of entrepreneurship and how to run a business and what things to look at and how to build a strategy and going on from there and looking at the different aspects in terms of how to do the business. One of the changing things that got introduced to me was the Singularity University. That was in 2017. A really exponential thinking kind of like a course that I took that really had a different views in terms of the disruption and in terms of handling things and making things in a different order. So Singularity University was one of the things done in Silicon Valley, in the NASA, and it gave me a different perspective of not just the banking world and the outside banking and how to do the disruption and what's going on in exponential thinking and essential ways of handling matters. Off to my career, professional career, since 1995, started with the ANZ Grinders Bank. For those who remember, Grinders was an old Indian bank during the British colony. It continued on in the Middle East. Grinders as a brand already has discontinued all globally. And for ANZ, it was the start of a career. Like a lot of people, the appreciation happened to be from the early career, from a real mentor at that time who helped me. And using my hobby and technology aspects, I remember the time I got the 386 computer compact on my desk, and I studied finance, and it was there on my on the desk of the in the bank. And from that, I started doing the automation of handling, automating all the processes done in the finance department. This is actually was my start of my career, and it kicked off from finance. I was sent to Australia, where I started my first ever technology implementations and learning about the core banking systems. That carried on to coming back and handling the whole operations of the bank. So from there, as a technology background, technology hobby, It helped me to the automation, change the processes, change the systems, do the centralization, move on to my career, and as they say, put me in the aspect of the changer, or doing a lot of change in the banking in Jordan and across the region. Standard Chartered took over as a natural takeover from Grindlays, and I carried on from there as the CEO, as the CEO, Chief Operating Officer for the bank. After Standard Chartered, I moved back into the finance world with the Egyptian Arab Land Bank and Citibank. For me, it wasn't a very much challenging job, but however, it was a stepping stone into moving into the larger and the most challenging part of my career, which was the Bank of Khartoum. And Bank of Khartoum was the real game changer in terms of demonstrating how change and impact can be done in terms of the way of thinking, the way of banking. Bank of Khartoum is a subsidiary of Dubai Islamic Bank. And one of the things that we went there, I started there as the Chief Operating Officer. And then I took over as the CEO of the bank in 2008. And from there, the whole aspect of the matter was to actually automate and change and do changes in the banking industry in a country like Sudan, including the implementation of mobile banking, microfinance, Islamic microfinance, and all that aspect. And whoever is there from Sudan, it's hands off to the country and the people and the change that happened there in terms of the in the banking world. A bit of career highlights. In terms of technology, during my career, I've done 7 core banking implementations. I implemented mobile banking, as I mentioned, in Sudan as a first of, one time, never changed in terms of a changer for the whole country in terms of changing from a cash society to a fully automated banking, mobile banking, including agent banking. The most challenging was changing a bank from a totally decentralized to a centralized, technology-driven management. In terms of the business development, both on the conventional and the Islamic banking. Pioneered a lot of microfinance under the Organization of Islamic Countries in cooperation with the IDB, and had a lot of regional and international representations. And as I mentioned, Sudan was a lot of like entrepreneur kind of a work, because it had included a lot of aspects in terms of being present internationally, regionally, opening up, removing the bank from sanctions that were imposed on a country. Very challenging environment, so very proud of those. During my career, I spent 25 years of my career, 20 years with them were in C-level jobs in terms of CFO, COO, and CEO of the bank. So this is like a bit of a career highlights. In 2018, I decided to move on. I came to Dubai and created and founded 11 Financial Advisory today, a regulated entity under the DFSA and the DIFC. And with a very close friend and partner, Path Solutions, we decided to go for a disruptive technology in trade finance, and we called it Trice. During that, with Trice, we decided to create this kind of platform that will disrupt the banking. Being a banker, I've come to realize there's a lot of changes that and potential that can happen for the banks in general. So with this Trice, we are looking at a platform that will not include the banks as an intermediary for any kind of trade finance, but having to have a platform that will enable both importers and exporters to actually talk to each other and have a marketplace doing the same operations and the same onboarding as any kind of banking norm, but the banks will be bidding for these kind of transactions. Moreover, as part of the initiatives, we're creating Arum Finance, which is a UK regulated entity license for Electronic Money Institute, AMI license, based in the UK, to handle payments from an FSA regulated entity, and this is like in progress. As an entrepreneur, during my career, one of the things I loved is, as an investor, as an advisor, as any kind of contributor to success, I've just demonstrated here a few ventures that I personally got into. I've gone into many more, but I would say I'm very proud of these 4, which are currently up and running. Some of them I've exited. Some of them I had exited with success. Some of them exited with a loss. And I guess that's the entrepreneur life. You know, it's not always going to be the fancy, successful, most profitable in all cases. But Blue Tens, and mostly they were done during my executive MBA, where I've got to know a lot of people, a lot of network. I got open up to a lot of ideas and a lot of people, and I've helped and participated in many of these ventures. And one of them is Blue Tens is electrotherapy devices. This is one of the ones I'm very proud of, and I would say I'm proud of that. I got a return of more than 200% over my investment into it, and it's still up and running, and it's doing really great in terms of as a product in Europe. Bluvo, one of the talent acquisition AI-powered technologies, really successful, and I think it's one of the technologies that really is going to disrupt the way talent acquisition is done. And we will be, hopefully seeing some of a unicorn, or I hope all of them will become a unicorn kind of an investment that comes up very soon. Kupanda, done during my executive MBA with a colleague in the Triumph. That is also into niche products in terms of the raw materials in Africa. And in taking these raw materials and using for cosmetics, it has this social impact and ethical impact into this. And it's an idea of a colleague of mine he'd had in Triumph, and we moved forward onto it. And I had the chance to be helping out to make sure that this idea comes out while being in Sudan as a CEO, using the fabulous products and materials that are in Sudan itself, unutilized, of course. Aeon Digital, digitalized idea for digitalizing banking applications, from onboarding to ensure that we have banks frontiering with the customer experience. You say paperless, seamless, branchless, for banks to have their operations run from a front end. As you see, it's a diverse kind of venture that I have in. A bit of, I would say, adventurous, but it comes from my background and my I would say bullish kind of a way of looking at various aspects in terms of the ideas and entrepreneur aspects. Now, enough of my background and things that I've done, and how can I help? With the experience I have, and I've done a lot of community work in terms of being in, for example, with Citibank and participating in Jazz education, educating young people into different aspects of the economy, banking, and finance. Also helping a lot of entrepreneurs. I thought, while I'm in the DIFC and handling the TRICE, I would be giving back to community and a lot of entrepreneurs. And I see that just under my office, there's the FinTech Hive, which is fantastically made by the DIFC. I thought of participating and giving back a bit of what what I can in terms of my experience in the banking, finance, entrepreneurship, education. So what would I like to focus on is like 4 points for everybody maybe sharing, and hopefully as a start kick off to people and what they can benefit out of it. First of all, as an entrepreneur, one of the things that you need to look at is the strategy. Strategy is the um, most core essence of it. But in the strategy, you need to look at what's the differentiation. That's one thing that a lot of young entrepreneurs, especially, they lack that differentiation of their product or the service that they are providing. And when you look at you look at your strategy, you need to see what differentiates a Careem from an Uber or from any kind of a brand to another brand. And on that differentiation is that where you actually build your product and make sure that you deliver something which of a difference. And if you do not have that kind of differentiation defined, you're just copycatting and you're not creating any kind of difference. So you will have in a lot of aspects a lot of failures happening when you actually do not define your differentiated aspect in terms of your product. Customer, who's the customer? A lot of people forget that they always think that they always know how to develop. It's easy to program. It's easy to make a product or an IT platform or a program or an application, and you just launch it. But who are you serving? Who's your customer? How many customers? You are as strong as how much customers you have, and how much you know about your customer, and how much you should know, and how much differentiation you're gonna do to that customer in his experience in whatever service or any kind of product that you are going to have. So that customer has to have to go through a journey. That journey defines his adaptability to the application, to the service, and how much he will be coming back as a recurring customer. The market, of course, one of the things that I strongly encourage people is to actually understand the market where the customer is the defining the forces. One of the greatest tools ever that I use are the Porter's five forces in understanding or answering the questions in these five forces in terms of the competition and the rivals and the potential market entrance, etc. A lot of people, expect whenever they offer that kind of application or that kind of solution to their customers, they neglect the fact that there's a lot of things on ground, whether in the region, whether in customary, whether culturally, that need to be adapted within the application itself. And that could be that strategy differentiation for any kind of business to make sure that they create that kind of difference for that customer journey. If that aspect is neglected, there will be a failure. There could be some kind of a change in the culture, customary change needed for that client. And from that aspect, you can have a great success. For example, what's the difference between, I'm picking on Careem and Uber, but these are one of the things that really define the change in the customary or the culture of the people in terms of how they handle the market and is it suitable or not suitable for a certain culture. Culture is one of the important things to understand to ensure. A lot of the US-based applications cannot work or will not work or not be successful in areas like in the MENA region or in different regions, just because it's culturally not adapted. Does not address the customer differentiation, does not handle the customer journey in terms of what the customer needs. Finally, and most importantly, is the ROIC, return on investment capital. One of the things that is also absent from a lot of people's mind is what is the ROIC? What is the return on this invested capital or on this investment? if you do not, determine or cannot quantify that return, whether in future value or discounted today or in terms of value built up, then I don't envisage that kind of a service or that product will be a sustainable product. So it will be just a matter of a hit and run. And a lot of the entrepreneurs, they feel very much passionate about their product, but they forget about, at the end of the day, we all have to have a return that needs to come back to our investors, especially if you're going to go for a seed one, seed two kind of a capital. A lot of the investors expect that return, and in some cases, the return expected will be a very, very high return needed for the risk that is taken for that, for participating or investing in that product and service that is needed. So this is one of the things. What can I do? Share the experience, success, the challenges and the failures. There's been a lot of failures, and from that failures we learn. And I can help in discussing and challenging the idea and business concepts, help develop and evolve ideas and strategies, and help in the sales pitch, where you need to work out to ensure that investor sees you and sees what needs to be coming back to him in his investment and in return for his investment. This is one of the things that are truly important. Introduction, of course, all the above is very much needed before actually doing any introduction to any partners and connections. Be well prepared. If you're not well prepared with a airtight, robust idea, and being challenged with the right people, with the right good, as much as you do effort, if you don't present it well, the partners or the people, investors, or the people that you're going to be connected to will not be looking at it in a serious manner. And as an entrepreneur, they will be looking for having kind of that kind of investor to come in, to participate, believe in the idea. As much as you believe into it, you have to communicate it right, and you have to present it right to ensure you have the proper investor in place. Very much essential. I think I have briefly done this this pack just for everybody to get introduced to everybody. Whoever needs to be in contact with me, I'm more than happy to receive an email, WhatsApp number, or a call to discuss matters and take it forward. And Yasmin, if you have any if there are any questions, any comments, any ideas, I'm more than happy to help and assist in. I'm based in the DIFC, and I'm willing to help in that. Yasmin, over to you.
Thank you so much, Fadi, for your presentation. That was great. And thank you for agreeing to help our ecosystem in any which way you can. I'm sure they can learn a lot from you. So now we're going to take it over to the questions. We do have a few questions in the Q&A box that I will read out. First, we have a shout out from Nadal. She says, great to see you, Fadi. You look great. Wish you all the best. So that's nice. So we have a question from Sushil. Sushil's asking, are you looking at the crypto space? What are your thoughts on this generally?
I'm not particularly looking at crypto space. I have, being a banker, maybe a bit of reservations on it. But generally, my thoughts, that's the way forward. And as much as you get more believers in the cryptocurrency or the crypto space, the more accepted as a medium way of exchange it becomes. And I think it takes both ends, a buyer and a seller, and both ends to actually have that kind of acceptance. There's a lot of noise going on, and that's the positive side of it. A lot of regulators, like Bank of England, is looking into regulating such businesses. So we will. It's looking like like there will be a regulated kind of a cryptocurrency coming up, which is more adaptive and more regulated and more accepted to the public. But personally, I can't say that I'm much into it.
Okay, so next we have from, and guys, please excuse me if I mispronounce any names. We have a question from Sergey. He says, Mr. Fadi, how does banks today use AI in Dubai, in your perspective?
There's a lot of use of AI, especially in the internal way of handling the customer and knowing the customer needs. Unfortunately, the much adaptation to the AI to the external customer is less than the internal. Internally, in terms of behavior, in terms of, especially on the credit side, there has been a lot of adaptation to or implementation for a lot of AI systems to get to understand the behavior of the customer in terms of his sort of consumer behavior instead of and sort of his payments behavior, and seeing how best services and products can be offered to them. There's a lot of need required for the front end systems to be for the AI side. And I feel and I sense that this will open up very soon, especially in Dubai, given
Okay.
the competition that is happening all across.
And then we have a question from Miguel. Miguel asks, could you talk to us more about Trice? What activities related with cryptocurrencies do you perform, and how do you comply with local regulations? I think you answered that one a little bit.
Yes, Trice is a platform it's a marketplace for trade finance, and it includes all stakeholders, stakeholders that are involved in any kind of trade operations, including the bank, including the insurance, including the logistics, including the inspection, including the freight. All these stakeholders are on a blockchain technology that will be participating in the transaction that happens between an importer and an exporter. For the local regulations, as I said, Trice, as like 11, is a regulated entity under DFSA, Dubai Financial Services Authority, and it will be having imposed on it will be the regulatory requirements under the DFSA, from the onboarding process, from the transactional process, from the risk process. All aspects that are related to the DFSA requirements will be adhered to. In terms of the cryptocurrency, payment is part of this. Of course, any trade will require payments in terms of settling the payments, or having to join onto the platform. So cryptocurrencies as a sort of payment, if accepted as by the regulator DFSA, it will be a means of settlement or payments of fee through the platform itself as part of the onboarding process.
Okay, great. So we have a question from Ahmed Al Sayed that says it's from Saleh Qadri. He says, good to see you again, Fadi. Wish you all the best. The question is, what are the key success factors in any fintech system implementation?
Key success factors is, as I said, in terms of the order. Well, thank you, Saleh and Ahmed. In terms of the fintech, in terms what are the success factors? Mostly is your strategy, your differentiation. Is number one, as I mentioned in the presentation. Number two is knowing the customer and having to actually define your customer and his requirements and needs. And then you go to the third in terms of ensuring that you have a strong, robust project plan for implementation to ensure that the deliverables are timely and as per the requirements in terms of security, in terms of robustness, in terms of viability, etc. There's one question before that, which is from Riyadh, Grace.
Okay, and then another one from Ahmed Al Sayed. He says, It's great hearing from you, Fadi. What about blockchain and banking and payment sectors on MENA? And as per your opinion, is there opportunities for it on low and medium economical countries?
Of course, blockchain is or part of the blockchain is that there's an open ledger kind of a concept into it, and it's a technology availed and used, and it's proven to be secure, and it has a lot of uses, and I see it the way forward in terms of the payments. For MENA region, maybe it's a bit behind in terms of implementing blockchain technologies, given that a lot of regulatory requirements need to be upgraded to include those kind of opportunities. But it will be coming soon. A lot of countries in Asia, Europe have implemented such methods of payment, and it's accepted, given its security. So it's coming forward.
Okay, great. So we have a shout out from Riyadh and DIC. He says, great to see you, and a very special hello. We have a question from Suleiman. What opportunities are banks considering in collaborating with fintech startups?
I cannot speak on behalf of the banks, but it all depends what you offer to these banks and offer to these customers. Banks are very much profit centric. At the end of the day, they will require that return in terms of return on that investment, whether in terms of add value to the customer itself, or in terms of profitability and how it could be coming back to the bank itself. Having a fintech dealing with a bank, it's a bit of very crucial to understand the requirements of the bank in terms of security, in terms of viability, and the banks in general are very jealous about making sure that their customer, or very protective about their customer and customer information and customer needs by itself. So having fintechs dealing with banks dealing with fintech startups, you have to be coming up with a very robust plan, strategy, very convincing. You need to ensure whatever you present to the bank is a win-win by all means to their customer, and make sure that you're presenting to them an idea that will bring them back add value. So banks are the toughest, I would imagine, to deal with in terms of fintech startups.
Okay, so we have a question from Omnia. She says, what is your opinion about the digital banks? Recently, we see top brands like Emar pushing them in the region. And good to meet you.
Thank you, Omnia. Digital banks are the challenge for the current banks, because a lot of and they are protected by the regulators. Obviously, digital banks come with a very, very much lightweight, low cost, very open-minded kind of concepts that depend on being with the customer at all times through their desktop, through the mobile, etc. Whilst you got a lot of the I wouldn't say conventional, but the banks which have been already there, they come with a lot of burden of overheads and costs. To transform them, you have to go through that regulatory kind of requirements in terms of the capital and how much you invested and how much you can offer. So there's a lot of challenges that the regulators have to overcome to allow these digital banks to offer their services and products to the public and their customers, because there are also other banks within the market that can offer the same, but they have been burdened with a lot of overhead, a lot of regulatory requirements, a lot of compliance requirements. It's unfair also for a newcomer to come in and just provide their digital solution and overtake these banks easily. So it's not an easy thing, but it's happening, and eventually the banks which are already regulated from ages or decades, they will come up to these to the levels that are of digital banking requirements, and there will be a fair competition, I would say.
Okay, and then Riyadh's asking, what are the top 3 challenges that you experienced while doing a bank transformation?
Biggest challenge, of course, is the culture. Depending on the country, there's a regulatory and the cultural challenges. There's the always biggest challenge in terms of change. Changing people and changing processes, and it's not the easiest. It's always that you need to have a way to. It takes time for people to adapt to change. It takes time for people to accept change. But having the proper, migration into and conversion into the new processes, that is key to actually making a success and making a successful transformation. A lot of textbooks and a lot of people know what is required to be done in terms of new technology, digitalization, etc. But being on the ground and as they say, it's not easy, and it's not it's not an easy thing to do. And especially when you have a well-regulated business sector like banking, it's always you have to have an education to a lot of stakeholders before you actually do the transformation of the change.
A question from Mahmoud. What's the impact of COVID-19 on your services and challenges to digitize it?
For COVID-19, for us, it's actually a solution. Enabling your trade to be done from your desktop without the need to go through the intermediary. That's the way forward. I would expect it's actually a positive impact, or should be a positive impact rather than a negative one. But obviously, if the traders themselves have an impact on them in terms of the change in habits, in terms of the volumes, in terms of the goods that are executed by both parties, by the importer and exporter, that's another aspect of looking at it. Then I will be impacted in terms of volume that is happening via that platform because of the end customer's impact on the COVID-19 itself.
Okay, great. I think, oh no, we have another question. One second. Okay, we have a couple more questions actually. So Riyadh's asking, what are your views on buy now, pay later offering in the region?
My views on that, again, it all goes by how much data are availed on consumers in terms of credit bureau, in terms of the need to actually have proper credit scoring for people. The region is coming up to that because everyone in the region regulators have realized that this kind of information needs to be availed, allowing digital platforms and allowing a lot of services, a lot of new ventures to come in to enable that, and it's happening. And the more you will find in this region that this kind of credit scoring, credit worthiness is coming up in a speed.
A question from Ziad. From your experience, what African countries have the highest usage or development in fintech?
I won't be able to answer that on top of my head, Ziad. I'm sorry, but I would say, given the African countries, highly developed in fintech will be, or the potential. If you're talking about potential, Nigeria is the highest potential for development. And knowing Africa and working in Africa, the potential there is immense. Given that you start where everybody ended, and given a lot of basic infrastructure availability, like telecoms and telecoms as a core development, that gives a lot of potential for these countries to be faster in terms of growth and being onboarded, as they say, for a lot of digital applications or fintech applications. However, there's a lot of challenges to that in terms of regulation, in terms of currency, and the second one would be in terms of the change in regulation. Um, but the potential in terms of fintech and offering that kind of fintech in most African countries, excluding North Africa, I would say, is immense.
So we have a question from Maheswari. I'm from India. I mean, looking for ways to take my product international. What is the way to bring my product to the Dubai market?
Depends what kind of product you're offering.
Yeah.
And we would need to see which kind of zone that it needs to be registered under. And then, first of all, from company registration, regulation, and then licensing, and then it can be taken forward. And I won't be the best person to answer this question, but, that's in a general way.
Definitely. Yeah. Okay, so we don't have any more questions from the Q&A box, and to all the participants, if you guys want to speak to Fadi directly, just please raise your hand and we can try to make sure that you can address Fadi. Okay, actually we have now a few more. So from one of the participants, hello, I have a fintech. I have a fintech app recently launched in the UAE and currently looking for funding. Do you know which and where is the best way to find angel investors in the UAE?
They are very much available in the DIFC companies, a lot of investors who are looking for that. And fintech also, the FinTech Hive avails some sessions for investors to come in and have a look at the investments. And I'm willing to help if you can share your idea or kind of a brief. Possibly I can introduce you to some people who are looking.
Okay, great. The next question we have is, Mr. Fadi, due to global climate change and catalysms, now there are probably millions of insurance claims to victims. How will this affect banking system in the next 1 to 2 years?
I will not be able to answer that. I don't have much information about that. I'm sorry, but maybe off the call, I can maybe research it and have a look at it.
Okay, next question from Shahid. How would you advise to banks on transformation and change management, culture or technology or processes?
Culture, change management, culture, technology. Of course, first of all, in terms of transformation on banks, the main challenge, as I mentioned, is the change management, and that involves a lot of things related to the culture itself and how things are done as previously. And people by nature, they love to do things as they are used to. Doing the change will require a lot of training, a lot of hand-holding, and a lot of modeling to ensure that people adapt to it and come to the level that is needed to actually come up to the needed processes. And surely bringing in any kind of process internationally or adapting any kind of a process has its challenges and will require also at the other end the flexibility to ensure that people are, processes do change and adapt slightly to whatever required with a lot of need to ensure that not core aspects or concepts are changed, especially in terms of risk and security.
Okay, and one more regarding artificial intelligence. So Sergey is asking, what are your thoughts about the upcoming development of artificial super intelligence, sort of Big Brother, that will combine AI, neural networks, big data analysis, etc.?
I believe all of these terms, I'm not very familiar with the artificial super intelligence, to be honest. but I would assume that it's like the big data concept, the fintech concept, the AI concept that has come on board. All of these are ways of handling data itself. I'm not very familiar of this new concept, to be honest, and so once we, I'm willing to take it with Sergi and maybe get to know it a bit more and answer his question later on.
Okay, great. I don't think we have any more questions for you, Fadi, but if you'd like to please leave on the last slide of your presentation so that our participants can have a look at your contact details. For a lot of them are asking how to get in touch with you, which is great. You've made such an impression, so that's phenomenal. But to everyone else, if you guys have any more questions, we just have a couple of minutes before we wrap it up for this week's Mentor Mondays. And thank Fadi for his contribution with his experience and expertise. Okay, so we have one more. So we actually have a couple of more. How do you see retail banking evolving in the UAE and beyond? And then the last one, what's your vision about the future of banking? And I think we can wrap it up.
Okay, thank you. On the retail banking, more digital, less branches, more outreach. That's the definite thing. You'll have a more outreach to clients. A lot of consolidation will happen between telecoms and banking itself. Fortunately or unfortunately, it's a big challenge for banks. As a concept of a bank itself, it's a very much challenge for a bank to sustain its business. And the use of banks will be as a definition of banks is more of a less need and more depending on the fintech or the financial technology. So you'll have more lightweight, more reachable, more outreach, more coverage, and less hassle of retail branch banking will be less and less by the day. And I envisage personally that the role of banks will eliminate gradually over time. But in terms of about future of banking, I think Sergi has the same question. Again, banks have a big challenge, sustainable challenge. Fortunate for them or unfortunate, regulators are the protectors of them to ensure that they have the sustainability business. But how long would the regulators be able to hold that? That's a debatable question. With the development with AI systems and applications and having all these kind of payment solutions and different currencies now, the cryptocurrency, it's a big challenge for banks to sustain their model and their business for the future. Definitely they need to evolve. Definitely they need to improve and change their way of doing it. And regulators will be forced at some time, at any point of time, to adapt to this change in concept and norm.